Hello, this is Eric Miscoll, publisher of EMS Now, and welcome to the virtual Eric Miscoll Show. Before we begin anything, I just want to say that we all hope that you and all your loved ones are safe and healthy and adjusting to the new realities that this COVID-19 is kind of forcing upon all of us, in both professionally and personally. Before we get going, some quick housekeeping issues. Everybody is muted as far as the listeners. We are not, as far as the speakers today. If you wish to pose a question, we've received some in advance, but if you do, please use the Q&A function down below to pose that, and we will come to those near the end of the discussion. Then lastly, I would just say that we are recording this, so we'll be publishing that here within the week on EMS Now, so feel free to share it with all your friends and and colleagues. So thank you for taking time out of your schedules today, wherever you may be, to join us. And thank you also to our guests here today. By way of introduction, I've introduced myself. The other gentleman, upper left, I believe, in everyone's column, is Phil Stoughton, founder of Scoop Communications, and always a great co-host on these. The next one as we go down is, we'll start left to right, actually, is Carl Hung, President and CEO of Season Group. We'll ask both gentlemen to introduce their companies here shortly. But it's Carl on the left, and the gentleman on the right, bottom right, is Elliot Shev. Elliot is the General Manager, Sales and Operations for Sumitronics Asia, and Sumitronics, for those of you who don't know, is a Sumitomo Group company. So, so thank you all for taking your time in doing this. By way of introduction, Carl, maybe I'll start with you. Why don't we give, the theme here is pretty clear today. It's EMS. Both of these gentlemen are from large international EMS companies. So we thought it would be a good way to get some updates on what's currently going on in the ground in different areas. Carl, why don't you start by giving a brief introduction to Seasons Group, please?
Oh, thank you, Eric. Season Group is a vertically integrated EMS with factories in US, Mexico, UK, China, and Malaysia. From an assembly standpoint, our strength is in complex electromechanical assemblies, particularly plastics-related products. Think complex printers. And our key unique selling proposition really is our strength in IoT-related design and manufacturing products. Our subsidiary, SG Wireless, we're staffed with some of the best RF engineers, and combined with our strong electromechanical assembly strength, we can actually design a lot of low-power battery-operated IoT devices for our customers that last for years underground or underwater. One of our latest projects right now, it is taking one of our BLE modules over here, and we've turned it into a quarantine tag. So for a lot of countries where quarantine is mandatory, for example, Hong Kong, some parts of Middle East, using quarantine tags, they make sure that people stay at home. So our BLE modules are connected to the phone and use the phone's GPS signal to track movement within the home. So these are the latest developments that our company is shifting towards as we deal with the new reality of COVID-19.
Excellent. Elliot, tell us about Sumitronics, please.
All right, Sumitronics Corporation is a wholly owned subsidiary of Sumitomo Corporation. And we have facilities through Asia: China, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Philippines, Japan. And we have one North American facility in Tijuana, Mexico, with our business operations in San Diego. And that's what I'm the general manager of. This facility primarily works in the automotive sector. And we have one main account, the big commercial account that deals in communications devices for call centers and things like that.
Excellent. To get it going, why don't we start by kind of getting a current situation in your facilities? Maybe Carl, we start with you. Kind of, what is the current state of situation in your operations? Are they all up and going? I'm sure they're not. You were briefing us before.
Yeah, I think we got hit first because of our first factories in China. and we got hit right after Chinese New Year's. So we were shut down for 9 days after Chinese New Year's. Looking back at it, 9 days is actually short compared to a lot of countries right now. But in China, we're back up at above 100% capacity, which is great. Malaysia, back up above 100% as well now, after about 3 weeks of the movement control order over there. The UK, we're around 80%. We're termed essential. We're allowed to work full capacity, but we have an issue with still the control of the virus over in the UK is not done as well as in other countries. So they're encouraging people to stay at home more. So more of our workers are choosing to stay at home. In the US, there is capacity restrictions in terms of building capacity. So all of our direct laborers back at the factory now, it's the IDLs and the SG&A, they are working from home to restrict the amount of people in the office. In Mexico right now, we're in Reynosa, and we're approximately 50% or so capacity right now.
Elliot, how was obviously in Mexico for the Tijuana one for you?
So we're currently closed. And in Mexico, you know, the Mexican federal government had mandated everything closed until the end of May, and unless you're essential business. So like I said, most of our business is automotive, 90% of it, and the automotive sector's shut down. And currently, obviously, all the indirect people, you know, like the program managers and buyers and things, they're busy. They're all working from home. We have a lot going on. We're working every day. Obviously, the factory's closed, so all the DL is at home. We have our one communications customer has been noted as essential, and we're filing our paperwork with the local government to reopen for their production lines only. We think that will happen next week. I know the auto industry is really anxious to open in the middle of May. Everybody's talking that way, but there's no movement to get the Mexico government, the US government, the Canadian government, all saying, okay, automotive is open on the 18th. Until they all agree to do it, it can't open because there's no place to ship parts. You know, if I build parts, I have no factory to ship it to if it's closed. The factory can't open unless they get parts. So all three countries need to open the automotive sector because it's very intertwined.
It's connected.
Parts move back and forth until they all wind up in an assembly plant.
Yeah, Elliot, when did that close? When did you have to close the Mexican plant?
We closed the second week of April.
Okay, okay, so you were open a good way through the initial.
Yeah, we stayed open. Well, we put safety, in the beginning of March, we put all of our health and safety things in place. So, you know, we live over here, so we know what's going on here. We go like, okay, we need face masks, we need social distancing, we need to set things up, we need the cafeteria to become safe. You know, that's their social hour. They sit, you know, shoulder to shoulder and eat and talk.
Yeah.
We can't do that anymore. So we've prepared all that. So now, while the place is more or less quiesced, there's only some people in receiving because material is still coming in. We've gone and put plexiglass dividers in the cafeteria. We've safety partitioned the bathrooms with plexiglass because, you know, they have big sinks and so we have, I think, we can completely sanitize, fog the factory in 4 hours. If somebody got sick and we said, oh my God, we have Corona in the factory, and 4 hours later, we would have it totally sanitized. So we have done everything that we can possibly figure out how to do to protect our employees when we can open again.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And what does that mean in terms of balancing supply and demand? Because when we look at the disruption, I think of it as kind of a three-factor disruption. You had a supply disruption in, February as a result of your Chinese supply chain being disrupted. You had a demand disruption that kind of followed that as maybe some of your customers were shut down and consumer markets were impacted. In the automotive industry, the UK was 97% down last month on its automotive sales. And then the third disruption, the kind of triple whammy, was the disruption in terms of workplace rules and regulations. Did the demand and supply kind of stall at the same time, or did you have customers demanding stuff that you couldn't fulfill? And now do you have fulfillment capacity and then demand shut off because you don't have that connectivity of the rest of the supply chain?
If you're asking me,
yeah, I'm asking you kind of how that cascaded.
Fortunately for us, we haven't had a supply chain disruption. Fortunately for those who think ahead, this happened after Chinese New Year. So my experience, and I've only been in this business about 2 years, that Chinese New Year is, okay, we're taking this 4, 5, 6 days off, but really not everybody comes back to work till God knows when. So we know it's this unknown time in February, in January, whatever it falls. So we order more material.
Yeah.
We front load, December, January, we start building up inventory. So we have an extra 3 or 4 weeks of inventory we normally wouldn't carry. And then we have orders that kind of ramp out at the other end. Now, our suppliers like that because they're not faced with a big punch in the face when they come back to get our goods out. So we kind of work with our suppliers and we do it that way. We didn't face that issue when things came back. So we were good on material. And then when the automotive, when we saw that we might have to shut down, we built as much inventory as we could pump out in our 7 days for the couple of weeks before. So we built up, a couple or 3 weeks, depending on what it was, of finished goods ready to go, because you can't restart a factory by walking in and turning on a switch. All that equipment behind me, some of that equipment hasn't been turned off for 3 years.
Yeah.
Since it was put in. So is it going to turn on when you turn the switch on? We don't know. It's electromechanical. Who knows what's going to happen? So we have to be prepared for that. So we took precautions as we could.
Trying to ramped up and buffered as best you could.
And our automotive customers keep threatening that, this OEM is going to want more of this. They think they're going to have a big demand. I look at auto news last week, and on the average, all the auto companies are down 50 to 60% in the US. So they have lots of inventory. It's approaching model year end for production. I don't know what they're rushing to do, except get out what they have in material and 2020 production and get ready for the turnover. But they want to get back. I know the people want to get back to work. We're all tired of sitting. I've been home for going on 9 weeks, and I'm not going anywhere till June. So I'll go out for a walk. Okay.
Hey, let me pull Carl into this one too.
Yeah, please.
More than just Mexico, you obviously have operations, as you reviewed before. How is this for you guys in the mitigation and the issues as Elliot's
and the restart, Carl?
And the restart.
Well, I think that's the interesting discussion. How do you restart a factory that's been running nonstop equipment for 3 years? And we struggled with that in China when we first started again in February, where we were doing even though we had people trickling back in, I think we started off with around 50% of the people showing back up to work. Our capacity, our output at that time was maybe 10% of our usual output, just because people were timid. People were afraid. The social distancing, no longer can you have people shoulder to shoulder on the assembly line. You actually have to give them the 6 feet to 9 feet of separation. So you have to walk and hand over the stuff into the middle, and then people pick it up and go to the middle. So we're always trying to get used to that level. And also we want to make sure, because Elliot would know this as well too, a lot of the, after the Chinese New Year's timeframe, quality tends to drop because there's a lot of new people showing up at your factory. People are very, very, they move around quite a bit in the Chinese labor market. And so quality is a concern. So for us, we made the decision, let's slow everything down. Let's make sure safety's there first and quality's there. There's no point working our butts off to churn up bad quality products. So we've took hits in February and March in order to slowly ramp up so that people feel safe in this new environment where there's a lot of precautions that we took that we had to look at. Aside from just the manufacturing standpoint, it's because we provide dorms for our workers as well too in China and in Malaysia. How do we keep the dorms safe? How do we sanitize the dorms? How do we encourage them to do their laundry more frequently? Because previously they would do laundry maybe once a week because it's expensive. So we open up our laundromats, free laundry for everyone, so that they're cleaning their clothes every single day. Those type of practices, minute details, but I think those are the ones that really sets a difference, because we can make our workplace safe for people, but it's really what they do outside of the office that matters more. So from an education standpoint, we've been telling all of our workers in the UK, in the US, even in Mexico as well too, when you get home, first off, if you have to go shopping for supermarket groceries, keep your mask on from work and go to the supermarket with that mask. Don't go without a mask on. But when you get home, sanitize yourself completely first. Don't hug your family. However much you want to hug your family right away, go take off all your clothes, shower immediately. Don't wear your shoes indoor. Telling people wearing the shoes indoor is one of the worst transmission of the virus because it falls to the floor. That type of stuff, I think I've spent most of my time trying to learn about the virus and try to educate everyone else on what to do from the office to the home, trying to take care of the entire 24 hours of our workers' life, because it affects everyone. So, ultimately that's resulted in less revenue. But I think for the long term of the company, our staff can see how we take care of them. They know that we are first and foremost worrying about their health and safety as well first, so that from long-term wise, we'll see the benefit later on.
Yeah. So Carl, did the lines turn back on?
It turned back on, but slow. And the people had to be trained up differently. So some people didn't return, which we understand. So we're trying to train up new people for different lines and rotate more frequently.
Yeah, one of the things that you said there that was really interesting, Carl, and I'm glad you did mention it, was less revenue, and that's kind of inevitable. And I'm curious from both you and Elliot, whether you think the industry can afford this kind of shockwave in terms of their finances and in terms of the kind of post-COVID economy. Are we going to see a shakeout there? I know last time we did this show with Dieter from Europe, he was talking about a 20% drop off in the number of EMS companies in Europe over the next 10 years, and he's now revised that down to the next 2 years. Do we think we're going to lose players?
Okay, I think there's a couple of scenarios to look at. First thing I want to say is I agree with the safety of our people. And as we have our staff meeting, I keep telling people, my concern is when they get on the bus to come to work, till they get off that bus when they get home, I know they're safe. I know they're in a sterile environment. What are they doing when they're at home is my fear, that they're going to bring it to work. So it's education, and hopefully they'll listen. Okay. In the US, if a company closed now or shut down, people went on an unemployment. The company wasn't paying salary. Of course, the company had expenses and they have to survive it, but they could lay everybody off. In Mexico, you can't lay anybody off. So you're required to pay them. So the first month we paid everybody 100%. This month we've reduced wages. Most of the companies in TJ have reduced their salary to direct labor about 50%. So we've cut some benefits to them and reduced their pay, and we're right now discussing what we're going to do from next Monday on, how we're going to handle it, because you can't just keep paying. But there's no subsidy from the governments to support any company in Mexico. So they're all on their own. I have no idea. I'm sorry, I can't even venture a guess how companies will be damaged from this terrible situation when we come out the other side. Are 10% of in our industry going to be gone, or 50%? I don't know. I don't know how deep their pockets are to survive this. But some of the smaller companies, I don't know what they're going to do, because there is no government assistance, and you're required to pay by law your people.
Yeah. So it's going to be different everywhere. Carl, do you see big differences in, Malaysia, Mexico, China, Europe?
Yeah, I think in Europe and the U.S. in particular too. Generally speaking, if you look at the balance sheet of even the medium-sized public companies, they tend to be more leveraged from an EMS standpoint, because just because capital equipment is expensive in EMS, you're making really low margins. You bank on turns, right? You have to turn your inventory to generate the cash to pay off the debt. So even though your expenses might not be piling up in the U.S. because you're not paying the workers, you're not getting the revenue in to pay off those interests. So I think the government's intervention in the U.S. should help somewhat in terms of forgiving loans, but I don't think it's enough to for some of our competitors to survive this, because their DE ratios, you're talking about up to 50%. So if they don't have the revenue in to pay off the interest, they'll be suffering. I think from the Asian standpoint, Asian EMSs tend to be less leveraged, just because Asian banks have been less open to giving out loans anyways. So I think from that standpoint, Asian EMS won't have as much shakeout in that sense. Yeah.
Let's look forward as we kind of have the time we have left here. What do you think the impact of all this is going to have on the future of this industry, on both electronics manufacturing? And I'm thinking in terms of from materials to, we were talking before about the whole regionalization issue. In some areas, there's almost you hate to say, but an anti-China kind of sentiment that comes out as well in all of this. So, if you're to ask you to kind of look in your globe there, or and look forward, what do you see the impacts for the future of the industry?
That's a great question, Eric. I mean, we've been talking about regionalization for how long? For quite a while. And I'm a big proponent of regionalization, because theoretically, total cost of ownership should be the lowest. It should be, if it's analyzed correctly. Look, there's certain things that maybe it doesn't make sense, but for the majority of things it does. Maybe this will strike a chord with people who have been, I can get it cheaper wherever, people to think, hey, you know what? If this was done locally, I wouldn't have any issues right now. So maybe people will consider paying the extra few cents to make it locally, wherever that is, or more regionally than they have now. I don't know. What do you think, Carl?
Oh, well, being the environmentalist, I'm all for regionalists. A regional standpoint, I'm all for my kids. Hopefully, they enjoy the same air quality that we're enjoying now during the shutdown. I think that's the benefit we see. I'm like, it could always be this clear. It's amazing if we can have this always. So I'm all for regionalization on that standpoint. The only issue is that politics always comes into play. And then also economics comes into play too, whereby the pure factor of capital expense, I think certain regions will be, certain supply chains will be able to move back to your own areas. Actives, components, those can be strategic. Those will be back in the US, those will be Japan, those will be in real controlled areas, Israel, for example. But when you come to passives, no one's going to invest in new equipment for R's and C's. So that's all stuck in China still. So it doesn't matter if you have the actives in the US, if you can't buy R and C from China, your supply chain is still tied down. So it's not as simple cut as paying a few extra cents to have it localized there. It's a matter of, ideally, it's, unfortunately, everyone's going more towards the VMI model, just-in-time model, where they don't want to have stock. But if we all have enough stock, a little bit of buffer, it'll help the regionalization approach. But over to the economic standpoint, people don't want to have the cash tied up in that. You've got that. You've got also the willingness of China to do dirty industries. So PCBs, touchscreens, batteries. I don't think any other country is willing to take on such pollutant industries. So again, those are stuck in China. So from that standpoint, I'm hoping for more regionalization, but I don't see it moving as fast as people say they should. Because even for face masks, for example, people have said face masks should be more manufactured in the US as opposed to 75% in China. The issue is when it's a good times, the masks themselves cost maybe, I think it's 10 cents a piece to sell. It's now that it's ridiculous that it's gone to $8 a piece. But people have to stay sane in the sense of not trying to go with the flow of the environment. I think they have to take it from a long-term standpoint before making such a drastic decision on where to go. But I'm all for regionalization if they could.
Yeah. And in terms of those financial models, and you talked about total cost of ownership takes a lot into account, but does it take enough into account in terms of, the value of risk? If you can save 2% on, all of your production, are you happy to take a 2% risk that 100% of your production will be disrupted? So are we considering that cost of disruption enough? And, as Elliot said, it's great if you can make stuff locally, but if locally is disrupted and locally is the only place you're making stuff, you haven't immediately got a solution. And I think we're going to see this really complicated discussion and debate between, on one hand, globalization, and on the other hand, kind of almost a nationalist approach, which I think we're going to get as a knee-jerk reaction. And we've got regionalization in the middle. For me, it's more about having companies having choice, as you've alluded to in the past, Carl, but also companies having the kind of models and the kind of agility and resilience that's needed to deal with the next crisis. And for me, that comes more from digitization than it does from regionalization or globalization. Do you think there'll be a greater push for digital transformation post-COVID?
From my standpoint, sorry, Elliot, you go ahead, please.
Yeah, go.
Okay, from my standpoint, I'm pushing for all of that, right? I think from Elliot's standpoint too, if we can all just manage a factory digitally, using MESs and all the IoT plugs in place, I think that would be the future. And I think certainly from a work from home standpoint, people are pushing towards that. Even the Hong Kong government, for example, they're giving subsidies now to push people to digitalize their business. I think it's around $50,000 US. Every company gets $50,000 to upgrade their Zoom packages, and buy all sorts of licenses. So it's there now, and I think that people are seeing the benefits of not having to drive an hour and a half to work. Maybe it's worth taking a lower salary to work from home instead and still try to achieve the same amount of output. So there's going to be a certain percentage for it, but I think from a factory standpoint, it's still good to be able to see that your colleague face to face and talk and laugh, because this is great, but it's not as good as seeing the complete body language of someone and giving each other a hug. I think that's the value where you can't do right now.
Yeah, I don't think you can totally replace face-to-face business.
Of course.
I don't think so, but I'm more old school. I believe in visiting your customers and having face-to-face meetings. We do lots of video conferencing all week long with people. but we still visit them. And the
Yeah.
personal meetings are different than the telemeetings. They just are. So we can't replace that. But, you know, as far as, you know, the supply chain needs to be more diverse than it is to be more like, look, resistors and capacitors are sub-penny parts. People want to be in that business. It doesn't have to be in China. It can be in other, you know, in Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia. I mean, it can be all over Asia, or it could be all over Africa. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, there's places we can do it other than China. It's just, that's where it is. And it has to migrate. So if there's a shutdown in China for whatever reason, it doesn't impact the entire world.
Yeah.
You know, we have a global commodity, we're a global economy, and we're not going to get away from it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Like you said, one of the nice things about this 2-month shutdown of the world is that people can see, in some countries, they can see the sky for the first time. There's kids who grew up, never saw the sky, or down the street, they couldn't see it, but now they can. Maybe they'll believe in the science that maybe we're causing a problem.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that's, if that was a side effect, that would be valuable. But as you say, Elliot, it's going to take a lot of time to kind of change these numbers that I've got behind me. This is manufacturing, global manufacturing output, you know,
right.
$4 trillion over here. And then this is Mexico at 200
we created
billion.
that, Phil.
Yeah.
We created that.
Yeah.
We can change it. We need to understand that for the global economy to work, we can't be focused in, you know, hub-centric. You have hubs. So China, that can't be the controlling factor for everything we do.
Yeah.
And
so
and a lot
some
of
distribution, some diversity.
It is.
Yeah.
You know, it just is, and we have to figure out how to move on from there.
But on that front, it takes a lot of coordination from other countries and working well together and putting the politics aside to actually achieve that, because
I totally agree.
That's the major issue I see, right? China's got the benefit. It's a dominant authoritarian country. One guy makes all the decisions. Whereas in the EU, you try to do that, but you can't achieve that. And elsewhere, it's difficult to push through that type of change.
I remember doing a market research report, God, over 15 years ago about India, and we identified the strength and the weakness was the same thing. They're a democracy, right? So that's a good thing, but it was also within the confines of India and how business gets done. It was just unbelievably difficult.
Yeah.
Hey, there were a couple of quick questions I know, so let me just hit these real quick from some of the listeners. They were very curious to know, and we've touched on some of this, both of you gentlemen, what you think the new normal will be. We've gotten variations of that, but do you want to expand on anything there? And based on Elliot's face, he has no idea.
There's no idea at all. Nor do I, Elliot. I'm with you on that one.
That's a great question. What the new normal will be. Don't know. We do know, the only thing we do know, it's not going to be what it used to be.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 years from now it will be. But in the near term, I think that if you look back at the 1917, 1918 pandemic of what they call the Spanish flu, look at how that was managed, especially in California, how that was managed, how LA and San Francisco did things a little different and how it affected them differently. It's a good study of what can happen with this. Is it going to come back again? Are we going to have a vaccine? What are we going to have? How will it work? Who the heck knows? Social distancing, everybody wearing face masks, I think is going to become a new norm for quite a while if we're going to get out. And, you know, restaurants that could seat 100 people may only seat 40 people now.
Yeah.
And I just think it's going to be different. Although, unfortunately, I see in the small lens of the TV camera that does the news, there seems to be a lot of people who just, you know, it ain't gonna affect me, and I don't care. I want my life
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
You can't
So-
fix stupid, so, you know.
Yeah, they don't get it.
Carl, anything to add there, or?
Yeah, well, for us, I think we're living in the future for compared to the U.S. Right now. We've been at this for 3 months now, so I can give a bit of perspective, especially in Hong Kong, where this weekend we're opening up the city again. We're lifting up a lot of restrictions now. Bars will be open again, movie cinemas, malls, and karaoke bars. They're all opening this weekend. Dinner-wise, you can go for dinner with more than 8 people, up to 8 people now. So I feel that there will be a sense of normalcy because people are resilient. It's amazing how resilient people are. We lived through this in 2003 in SARS. The only difference that we really did see, unfortunately, was cleanliness, or fortunately, cleanliness. People were more focused on wearing masks, even after SARS. When people were sick, automatically they had that social civic duty to put on a mask. They didn't want to spread that. Coughing etiquette changed completely. People in Hong Kong stopped coughing into their hands. They realized they had to cough into their arm instead. And then even for spitting, I think that's a major issue in Asia. People spat on the floors all the time. And after SARS, it stopped a lot of. So we'll see that change. I think around the world, there will be better civic duty amongst the majority of people. There may be the few people who are outliers, but I think in overall wise, we will be more polite to one another. And I do hope for that. There may be, again, outliers, but I don't want people focusing on those outliers. I want people focusing on the good of people. From an economy standpoint, I feel, unfortunately, there will be a major issues coming up in the near future. The only way that this economy keeps on going is via bailouts. I think people got addicted to bailouts after 2008. So every country is issuing debt. So my question right now is, if everyone's issuing debt, who's buying the debt? Someone's got to be buying it all, but I know everyone's issuing it.
China.
Yes. I don't know. China's issuing a lot of debt too. So I don't know who's buying that too. So everyone's issuing debt.
You say that Hong Kong's going to start to reopen this weekend.
Yeah.
Is that because the incidence of COVID-19 is way down, and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, we took an extreme approach, shut down the city, no visitors allowed except for residents. Everyone coming back must be home quarantined for 14 days. And those who are coming from high-risk region are in government quarantine centers. So there's no free movement. If you're from outside, you're stuck at home. So for that controlled everything, where we've had zero local transmission of the virus for the last 18 days, I believe.
There's no new cases for 18 days.
No new cases for 18 days. All the new cases had been imported. So people from the UK coming in, caught at the airport. So we're testing them at the airport, 100%. You don't leave the airport until you have your test results. So that controls it completely. That's allowed us to do zero transmission. That's what Hong Kong's done. That's what China's done. Korea's done that. Taiwan's done that. And until the US and the UK start realizing that, they'll have transmissions because people are still flying around. Yep. So again, it goes back to again, is democracy a good thing in this scenario or not? I think.
You know, it's funny you talk about the coughing etiquette, and you reminded me of my English teacher in high school, Bill Sullivan, and he had a protocol that if you coughed or sneezed in his classroom without using a handkerchief, you had to do 100 push-ups on the spot.
Wow.
We all learned to carry, you know.
Yeah, handkerchief. And 100 push-ups is difficult when you've got a cough.
Exactly, right.
100 push-ups is difficult now. Without a cough.
Absolutely, every day. Okay, guys, drop and give me 100.
Yeah. Hey, before we go, though, I do want to ask everyone, just kind of on the lighter side, because this is kind of heavy. You know, with all of the restrictions that COVID has enforced on us, what is the one thing you're looking forward to doing again that you've been restricted on?
I reckon Carl's off to do some karaoke.
Yeah.
Personally, or from the business side?
I'll go personally on this one. Remember your personal life, Elliot? That was
I don't remember.
8 weeks ago.
Quite a while. Just to be a quote, to be free, just to do what I want to do. You know, if I want to go to the beach, I can go. If I want to go to the store, I just go. If I want to, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I don't have to go I haven't used the car much, so I haven't bought gas for a couple of months. But, you know, before the last time I put gas in the car, you know, it was like, oh, I need a rubber glove. I got to sanitize the whole side of the car that faced the pump. And, you know, it was like all this paranoia about, because we don't know how's this thing transmitting. And yeah, I'd say just to be able to do what I feel like doing, like go to a restaurant.
Yeah.
You know,
Carl, you had a big smile on your face when I asked that.
Oh,
mind.
We talk about this every day over here, even at lunchtime. So I think at the so many variations of answers, and the key one right now is just hugging family, distance family, because it hasn't really, that might not kill a lot of people. It's killed a lot of people, killed a lot of people from COVID-19. But there's a lot of side effects as well too. People who deserve treatments for health. I had a cousin who passed away last month, not from COVID, but because she couldn't get treatment for her cancer, no chemotherapy. So there's a lot of cases like that. There'll be a lot of unofficial death numbers, and I think the key that people are far away from family right now. They're doing Zoom, but just to feel them, to feel connected. I think that's what we all need right now to keep us going.
Yeah, I think go around go to your family's house, have dinner, hug everybody, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
What about you, Eric?
I was supposed to go visit my my daughter and family and stuff the week in April. So that got canceled, and you know I want to be able to just do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and that's, you know, for me, I have a new granddaughter. She's what now, 4 months old, right? Up until and I saw her at the birth in December and before and briefly at the beginning of this, but you know, you want to just pick up the little girl and kind of give her a hug and a kiss. Seeing it on the pictures, that's wonderful, but
it's not the same.
You're missing so much. So Phil?
Yeah, we're tactile. I mean, I think things are starting to ease here, and we've been an interesting example of a country. We're just a little bit south of 30 million people, so it's not a huge population, and it's pretty well distributed. And we went into lockdown really early, and I think people are generally quite frustrated by that. But the case numbers are low, and we're certainly in Victoria, we're in single digits of cases, doing a huge amount of testing, which I think is huge. But everybody, you know, it's a cafe society here. Everybody's missing going out for a flat white, as Carl said earlier.
Missing a good meat pie, right?
And a good, pie and sauce. Yeah, absolutely. Just getting out doing normal stuff. And it's really interesting. You know, I love going out to all these kind of high-end restaurants, but I would take a pie and a cup of coffee right now. That would do me. I'd be happy, and just to sit and chat with friends and be be close to them. That's what I'm looking forward to.
That's normal though.
Yeah. Well, and the four of us being able to sit on a panel on at a studio at a show, which this is kind of a replacement for. Normally, you know, Eric and I would be sat at two ends of a panel, and everybody would be within a foot or so of each other, and just that human contact is something that I think we're naturally designed to do.
Yeah. Well, listen, all of you gentlemen, thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing your experiences. I'm sure the audience appreciates this very much. Y'all stay safe out there. And, we will be publishing this, so you'll get to see what stars you really are here shortly. So
thank you, Eric.
Thanks,
Elliot.
All right,
thank you, Eric, Phil. Nice meeting you, Elliot.
Nice meeting you.
Take care, guys. Bye for now.